who did not give offerings to the sacrifice of Samhain would have a curse put on them, and thus the origin of trick-or-treat. So they would go around from house to house and they would say, hey, we're here collecting sacrifices for the god of Samhain. Are you in or out? So they would say, okay, I'm in because I don't want to get cursed. And so they would give them treats and they would give them things and they would give them stuff that they had and valuables. And then they would go back and take that and offer that to the god of Samhain. But if they came to your door and you said, I'm not offering to Samhain. Oh, and by the way, many Christians died because of that too. They would actually put a curse on your house. One of the ways that you showed that you were sympathetic and willing to give a sacrifice was to place some sort of carved gourd with a lit candle near your doorway. So as people are walking around on this night collecting these sacrifices for the god of Samhain, they would say, oh look, this person has a lit gourd in their doorway. They are a Celtic religion practitioner. Let's go there and we can get some loot from them. Interestingly enough, when they lit those gourds, they burned them with human fat from the human sacrifices that they kept. All of this is documented and it is absolutely true. This is the origin of jack-o'-lanterns, dressing up for Halloween, and trick-or-treating, but it doesn't end there. Black cats were believed to be the reincarnation of certain people who were faithful worshipers of Samhain. So if you made it to Euphoria, right? If you were in good with the god of Samhain, guess what? You would come back and be reincarnated as a black cat. Look, have you ever seen these shows like Bewitched? And there's another show out there about a young girl who's a witch, and she has a black cat that follows her. All of these things. Look, these cats, if you watch these cats and the characters that they play, they are always givers of wisdom. Okay? They always give wisdom. They always talk to people. They always tell them, things that are going to happen or give them some kind of advice. The witches and that kind of stuff. They were believed to have familiar spirits. I'm going to go back just a minute here. They were believed to have familiar spirits, and they were good to have around to draw spiritual wisdom from. You watch this, say if you ever run into one of these programs that have a black cat in it in the context of witchcraft and stuff. They're always the givers of wisdom. They're always the smart ones. They're always telling the witches and the Wiccan priests what to do. And watch that. And that's where we get that black cat thing from on Halloween. Witches were maternal figures in this ancient religion. They provided wisdom for people because they were experts on divination, spiritism, animism, pantheism, and polytheism. So they were the experts in this area. So people would go to witches for their potions. People would go to witches to contact the dead. People would go to witches even to get healed. I mean, all of these things, you would seek out a Celtic witch in order to help you with that. And so, of course, what comes next with Halloween but is this witch. Now think about this. You walk around in Halloween and what are the things that you see? Costumes, jack-o'-lanterns, black cats, and witches, right? All of those things, those are the earmarks of Halloween. You can't walk into Target without seeing those things at least 100 times right now. You can't walk into Walmart without seeing those things at least 1,000 times right when you walk in the door. These are the main things that you see having to do with Halloween. Well, where did it all come from? The Celtic pagan religion and those who worshipped the god of Samhain. She's got a black cat there. See that? That's that Deborah Gray. In fruit-bearing trees, it was believed to live a goddess. So the female goddess in fruit-bearing trees. Okay, you get the connection with bearing fruit and all that kind of stuff. According to the Celts, those who wanted a blessing from this goddess would have to gather the fruit from these trees, but not use any hands. Have you ever bobbed for apples? When do you bob for apples? At Christmas time? At Easter? When do you bob for apples? You bob for apples at Halloween. You know where that comes from? It comes from that ritual of gathering fruit without using your hands, and that was a way to worship the fertility goddesses that were in those fruit-bearing trees. The Celts could make a special kind of bread to offer to the pagan gods. This special kind of bread would be sliced crossways on top before baking. You ever heard of hot cross buns? You know why they did that? Because again, they believed that the gods lived in everything, right? Gods were in everything. That's animism, right? You all understand that? And so if they cut it open, they would allow the gods to escape before they ate it. We get that hot cross buns from here. When do you eat hot cross buns? When do you walk into Coburn's and see hot cross buns? At Christmas? No. At Easter? No. You see hot cross buns every time right around this time of year. You walk into Cub or Walmart or Coburn's or any other place like that. There were two colors that were identified as a worshiper of Samhain. You guessed it, you're right. Orange and black. Where did orange and black come from? Well, this came about because this is the color of the evening fires that they had while burning human sacrifices. Remember going all the way back to Stonehenge, okay? And the bones that were found there. Yellow and black comes from the colors that were given off during the burning of those human sacrifices. Think about this for a minute. That word bonfire comes from the term bonefire. Bonefire. Well, that comes from human sacrifices. That the Celtic religion burned to sacrifice to the goddess Samhain. Even the owl was a guardian of the Druid priests. So the owls would fly around, and they were specifically purposed to be a guardian for the Druid priests in this pagan religion. And so you always see the owl. I want you to pay close attention to the horns on the owl's head. Okay? It's always a horned owl. But this is what you see. Anytime you walk into Walmart, you see the owls, you see the hot cross buns, you see all of these things that we just talked about. It's not happenstance, it's not accident. You see those things in the store because people are still practicing the Celtic religion today. They just don't know that they're worshiping the devil doing it. Amen. And as I said before, the devil isn't so much concerned about whether you understand you're doing it as much as he is you just doing it. Remember going back to the Garden of Eden? He didn't care if Eve understood what she was doing just as long as she did it. Okay? We got to ask the question, how did paganism then spread and become so big in America? I mean, our country started out literally with a godly heritage. Even members of the United States Supreme Court have considered America to be a Christian nation, much to the chagrin of liberal media out there today. But certainly we have a Christian heritage, a goodly heritage. So how did we get so steeped in this paganism today? Well, let me explain it to you. It's very simple. In the 1840s, a disaster known as the Irish potato famine happened. Now, if you're a good Irishman, you call that a Holocaust, not a famine. But nonetheless, the Irish potato famine happened. This was a disastrous event that literally killed millions of Irish and caused them to end up relocating to America. What did they bring with them? Because the Celtic religion was so steeped in that area, they brought with them to America the Celtic religion and traditions. In the 1840s, okay? Keep that in mind. But during the early part of our country, I'm going to go back here just for a minute because this thing's flipping out once again. During the early part of our country, many settlements and cities and towns instituted ordinances against celebrating Halloween. Did you know that? That before the 1900s, most of the cities in our countries had ordinances against celebrating Halloween. They said, we're not allowed to celebrate Halloween. We're not going to allow that in our town. We're not going to allow that in our city. So it didn't happen. Now, I know that you've all seen the Little House episode where they go trick-or-treating and they dress up and all that kind of stuff. Folks, that is Hollywood. That is not reality. Sometimes I think my daughters get confused and think that Little House is reality and, Paw Ingalls and all that kind of stuff. Not reality. For the most part, that's all pretty much just fiction. But the first documented Halloween celebration was right here in America in 1921. Where? Anoka, Minnesota. Did you know that? The first celebration in America ever documented for Halloween, 1921, Anoka, Minnesota, the capital of it all. It was about the turn of the century in the industrialized period.